You
Correct.
know, the cooler agency than DARPA that I never hear anybody talk about is IARPA, and IARPA is doing the really
Ooh.
cool shit. Yeah, so I I used to know
Don't they run
someone.
HARP or that's some?
No, I think it's a different agency. I think maybe is that NORAD? Maybe it's not. I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, NORAD does run HARP.
Yeah, but IARPA does mostly like they studied nootropics, they studied cybernetics, they study sleep cycles and stuff like that. Like a lot of the sleep cycle research came out of IARPA. But one of the craziest stories I read on that whole like Stargate wave was I saw this article called "Life Imitates Akira: The NSA's Fear of Psychic Nukes," and they did a memo back in 1977 where it was the result of their study into whether or not 10 psychics could cause like a chain reaction to destroy a whole city with like fear and panic just from like a psychic attack. And so if you want to go see some of the crazy stuff that they were studying in the 70s, go read that. It's called what did I say, NSA's Fear of Psychic Nukes. It's on that Muckrock site, which has a bunch of they publish a lot of the freedom of information stuff. That's whenever it comes out, it's usually because they've done a FOIA request on it. So all the psychic studies and stuff that the government has done are on there. And there's some really interesting stuff that even came after Stargate that the government's continuing to study, and like the results are not insignificant. Like just go research it on that site. It's the same site as that article. There's so much on there to dig into if you're interested in like parapsychology.
One thing I find very interesting about all of that research into like consciousness and psychic stuff from the agencies, the CIA seriously looked into bioluminescence, and they have like images. This stuff's declassified; you can find it, but there's images that they took of someone actually using a bioluminescence, like while they're using telekinesis or something like that. So it makes me think Harry A. Davis was absolutely right, and they do.
He was a prophet.
I think he was absolutely right about glow in the dark, because this is in Tibetan stuff too. I do know this, and it's also a siddhi in tantric practices. They say when you get to a certain level with Kundalini yoga and with other yogas as well. A lot of people have said that literally people glow in the dark. So you'll see
the Dharma body radiates. Yes.
Yeah, the Dharma body radiates, and in Zen as well. So Zen has kind of distilled, Zen distilled a lot of the tantric stuff as well. And they're of course they're a separate lineage, and a lot of people argue it's not even necessarily a dharmic or Buddhist lineage. It's just something with influence, but that's a bigger debate than I'm going to get into. But they have a concept about when you get the transmission. So when you receive transmission in Zen from your dharmic lineage or from your master, that you start seeing the colors, and that they'll like your master will ask you what color you see, and that kind of like gives him an idea as to where you are in your development. But I've seen like
seeing colors, closed eyes or open eyes.
Open eyes. So like when you see colors in a room change, that's when shit's really starting to happen for you.
Oh,
so
nice. I got that to look forward to.
Yeah, you do, man.
Well, even in certain Western occultic practices, like they find these magic books everywhere. There's this one ritual that has been linked to Freemasonry where the initiates, they're given a series of books that have blank pages, and that they tell you to look into it, to actually read the words, and then after a while you go through the rites. I think in a lot of ways social media has a lot of occultic power in it. We obviously know this with the Egregore and so forth. And I think that's why Alexander Dugin thinks that Nick Land is a glow in the dark, because he thinks that the CCR Cybernetic Culture Research Unit like was involved with MI6, and there's all this like weird, like he thinks Nick Land is bringing on the Antichrist or something like that.
Ooh, so. I'm doing my Nick Land research because I'm trying to get him on soon.
Well, I mean, I don't doubt that the CCRU has at least was on the radar of MI6. I mean, the stuff that they were doing with cybernetics, for example, and aesthetics and the concepts they created. I mean, I definitely know that probably Mark Fisher was probably being monitored by the government.
Rest in peace.
What is exactly cybernetics? For those who don't know, and that actually includes me, I don't know what cybernetics is. So what is cybernetics?
I mean, it's like
a system. I'm hazy on the term as well, but all I know, it's about information feedback loops. But Verse, maybe you know that.
I mean, I from the Nick Land sense, I don't have like enough of a detailed sense to be able to give him the proper definition. But I think he's using cybernetics as like the general like electronic connection between the connection between humans and technology, and then other humans via technology, etc. But
interesting.
Does that encapsulate consciousness, or is it biological?
Your like self and like your consciousness and all that is shaped by the net and things like that. Like it is a recursion, right? So when you consider the time frame, this is also when like the cybernetic feminism stuff came out, cyborg feminism stuff came out.
Feminism,
xenofeminism was like an offshoot of CCRU stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah. Then Donna Haraway went to critical animal stuff,
exactly.
Yeah.
So all this stuff is like your self is inseparable from technology once it's been introduced. So like you are cybernetic now. Like I was just like for example, a good example would be like our memory is like not as strong as it used to be because we've outsourced our memory to like our technology. And
what's
similarly,
funny,
we also have like what's called ambient awareness. Like we have like insight into other people's lives because of like their updates in technology, like as if it were a true tribe. Like, I have a general sense of like your well-being, et cetera, because you've done XYZ posts and like you've checked in here and here and here. Like these are like, cybernetic like enhancements.
In a way, like
ourselves.
we become each other's icons. So much like you would, let's say, worship a certain, before it was like worshiping celebrities and pinups back in like the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. Now it's a minor type of worship of certain people whose faces and videos we keep seeing on a daily basis. Same thing with memes. So in that way, we become each other's thought forms, and those thought forms connect to the original person as well. So when you are thinking
but I think I think it's less like the idolization, like a sainthood or like whatever. I think it's generally more like a reversion to like the tribal, like our tribal selves. Like even Alexander Barb, you just had him on the stream. In his book, like Digital Libido, he talks about like his work is like in like I can't remember his phraseology, but effectively he's talking about like we need to like look back at like our ancient human animal and how it's being translated into the net, because that's the only thing that's still the same about humanity is our tribal, and it's our tribal roots. It's our, our human biology. And this is being like projected into the present via technology now. So we still have these exact same behaviors, and understanding how our tribal behavior is being utilized via cybernetics and vice versa is how we'll get insight into like what humans actually want and how we'll be able to thrive in this era.
I like that. I think technology, it tends to get a bad rap these days. Everybody wants to be like Ann Prim gang or something. They want to worship Ted Kaczynski. And I understand the ideas behind it. It makes sense. But the thing is, I do think technology, like as harmful as it's been, it's doing something specific. It's using us to like seed the stars.
Mm-hmm.
Like it is natural. There's nothing that's not natural, I don't think. And some things are more volatile than others, but that's nature. And that's what technology is. It's the birth pangs of something greater. I think seeding other planets in the universe with the energy of the life here.
I genuinely think we're bringing like a god or a deity or like a higher entity into existence.
I agree, Verse. That's what I was just going to say. There was a thread a while back. I don't even know if it was on Twitter or if it was on an image board, but somebody said something once about how the only technology that has really been progressing in the last few hundred years in the West is like automation in and of itself. To to what end? And so it's funny because he was bringing up in the same thread, he was using like civilization and RPG systems as a kind of explainer, and he said how India and all of these countries they may not have, they didn't get to rocketry first, and they didn't get to automation and factories. They didn't get to that first, but the Tantra is so well developed, and all of these, you have 64 sacred sciences. You have a lot of the texts that aren't even available outside of their specific orders, and they're just becoming available now. And I think that's the thing that most people underestimate about these technologies that they've developed over there, these religious and spiritual technologies, is that they're only just being translated now. Like on YouTube, Chant Central is just now in the last 5 years bringing these mantras that have been secret for hundreds of years, and he's putting them on YouTube. And you'll occasionally see people in the comment sections like, "Why are you giving this to normies? Stop."
Wait,
Yeah,
what is his
you know,
name?
Don't do this.
What is his name?
Chant
kinda right.
Central. Yeah,
It's also like it's crazy because like the Western world is great at like changing and manipulating the external reality, and like the Eastern world has like vast like understanding of like internal like, subjective experience, and it all is like a it's all kind of happening simultaneously in that like this our understanding and our ability to kind of like bring forth this deity to a higher being is happening, you know, via technology and like all these like practices.
But do you know Shambhala Publications?
sounds familiar.
They publish. I've bought quite a bit of overpriced books, like from the Pali Canon and all that. And they're like the number one publisher of a lot of like Hindu and Buddhist texts. And they actually still have, if you look at their catalog, they still have certain texts that you have to prove that you're an initiate of a certain form of like Vajrayana Buddhism, for example. And people are like, wow, this is crazy that in the modern world they could still restrict texts and it's like an initiate sort of thing. But the one thing I wanted to talk about, or rather to bring up, because Verse mentioned it, because not to toot my own horn, but I went to university that actually had a Post-Human Studies Institute, and it was really just a few professors, but I got to like be a part of some lectures and things like that, and really a lot of it's more about the fragmentation of being in terms of being embodied with the certain abilities and gender and all that, and really they consider transhumanism a smaller subsect of post-humanism, because transhumanism they consider to be like the bro nerd stuff, you know. But post-humanism is really about, if you read, you know, people like Donna Haraway or what's her name? I went to her lecture. There's Drake, someone that talks about prosthesis and how like certain differently abled people are expressing their identity through various like artistic, aesthetic, you know, changing their arms and legs and stuff in the future. You know, we're gonna have transplant. Yeah, we're in the future. We're gonna have transplants, and so it's really about changing the human as such. And this is why I think they're pushing for there's a lot of almost like implicit Gnosticism to it. That the ancient world, they understood a lot of this, but it seems that we're intent on having this like critical theory Western workaround around a lot of these like different studies in terms of human capability and things like that. Because a lot of these people, they talk about like the post-human animal and how we can communicate on different somatic levels with the animal and animality and stuff like that. But it's like really an academic nerd sort of way of going about it. It's like the closest, it's kind of like object-oriented ontology. It's the closest these people will come to spirituality, which I think is kind of sad, but you know.
Well, Gio, I have a question for you. So you watched our stream with, you remember the stream with Alexander Bard, what he was saying about his hate for Gnosticism. I was wondering if you can touch on that, why exactly, because he dismissed a lot of this stuff as being like fairy tale nonsense, where for him it's all about the Heraclitean changes that are constantly going on and nothing is permanent. But at the same time, I personally kind of imagine it as like a cone where just like, and I guess all this is based on my meditation visions. That's the only thing that I have reference for, because it's the only thing that I am able to truly see and experience. So I could say, okay, this is something that I could apply to other things in the world. But anyway, it's like the periphery is a circle and it goes all the way to a point. And the idea here for me, my interpretation is that, yes, we have this cycle that keeps going in the life that we're living, but then the more you start going into the point at the center, the more you start seeing worlds that are more like ideas, archetypes, that are building up things like thought forms, that are building up things that then manifest themselves within this circle of life that we're living in.
Well, yeah, I think it's interesting. I wish I was on that one. I wish my internet didn't shit out. My fucking service provider, but maybe we'll have him on again, because
I'd love to. I think he'd love to. He really enjoyed being there.
Because I find his critique of Gnosticism, I wish he would elaborate a bit more, because he's a cyclical thinker, because it tends to be that a lot of people who like especially in the 90s when he was writing about technology and cybernetics, a lot of these they tend to be like Mark what's that guy that what was with Terrence McKenna, Mark Pizarro, someone. A lot of these people tend to be implicitly Gnostic in their thinking about around technology and the techno-human, the netizen. And so I think it's kind of crazy how Alexander Bard basically invented the concept of the netizen to be like such a vehement critic of not of like modern secular Gnosticism. I think that's kind of fascinating.
I think also, well, from my like understanding of him, it's the actual like I don't know, it's hard to explain, but he has a very like he likes to take like the most recent paradigm and then use it to explain the next one, if that makes sense, right?
Oh, yeah.
So his concept of like the netizen, like just like we were just talking about like post-humanism and whatever, like and like the fragment itself, he's like big on like the individual from like Deleuze type of standpoint, or like and schizoanalysis and whatever. Like I think that he thinks of Gnosticism as like a intermediary step to like the, you know what I mean, like kind of like alchemy to chemistry. Like like he thinks there's probably like the good ideas were transferred and there might be some like left over, but on the whole it's kind of like an intermediary is what I feel
Right,
like
he wants to skip the step.
Yeah, like he definitely references it. He like references like some of like the like he definitely 100% from my reading he references like some of the like more abstracted versions of Gnostic ideas, but through the lens of the most previous, through the lens of like schizoanalysis or through the lens of like Deleuze or whatever. So I wouldn't like I would say he's just like nominally not Gnostic, if that's coming across.
I'm following a little. Yeah.
No?
I think I asked in the chat, like, isn't Gnosticism more Heraclitean than traditional dualism? And I do remember Bard saying, I thought he actually just wanted to skip the Gnostic step or something. He thought,
well, because Gnosticism is like dualism on crack cocaine.
Yeah.
I
think he just thinks it's the misdirection as opposed to like being hyper dualist. You skip that. Like that was like the incorrect path forward. Just like in alchemy, the incorrect path forward was trying to transmutate, gold to, like whatever, lead to gold. That's the incorrect path, where like the correct path was to go and analyze things at a molecular level. Similarly, hyperdualism was bad. You should have went in the monist direction and rejected dualism.
Right. I always thought that was an interesting way to frame alchemy, as a failed attempt to transmute lead into gold, when really it was a process that had countless discoveries.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. There's good things from alchemy. Well, a lot of good things came from alchemy.
Yeah. Much of alchemy was hidden, in the form of symbolism to prevent it from being persecuted as like a heretical sort of teaching during
exactly.
Yeah.